Well, it's been a difficult week, difficult couple of weeks for myself personally, and I think my fellow Americans scattered across this room. I'm aware that this is becoming a bit of a refuge for displaced Americans in this space, and I'm not sure if Nikki and Sean are here. I know you were the first ones here. They started the chain migration, and here we are. But it's been hard to watch the news, particularly the last couple of weeks, and it's compelled me to share a bit of a personal story. So I'm going to start with a personal story, just to let you know why this is particularly hard for me. So I grew up just outside of the city of Des Moines, Iowa, in a booming suburb, very middle class, very homogeneous, called Urbandale, Iowa, which is a name I think belongs in a DC comic. If Clark Kent grew up in Smallville, perhaps Supergirl grew up in Urbandale, and they ended up moving to Metropolis to find a more interesting life. I was privileged, though. I grew up in a nice, comfortable home. Went to a small Baptist church and attended university at a small Baptist Bible college in Minnesota. And when it was getting near time to graduate, I was challenged by a campus pastor and a couple of friends to move into the city of Minneapolis and experience life amongst the urban poor and amongst people who are very different than myself. So at the age of 21 or 22, I moved into South Minneapolis, where for the first time in my life, I realized what it was like to be a minority in your own community. And to live amongst people who are very different, who spoke different languages, who ate different food, who came from different cultural backgrounds. And it was a real challenge, I have to say. Within the first couple of months that I'd moved there, my bicycle was stolen, my car window was smashed in, and the radio was pulled out. And I have to say, I felt quite isolated and didn't know how to connect with people within my own community. And there was a lot of fear and a lot of trepidation. My neighbors came from places like Somalia or different parts of Latin America, and it was hard to find a way to connect. Actually, in a very, what I would say, probably desperate attempt to connect with my neighbors, I devised a strategy which involved sitting out on the bus bench, or by the bus bench in my front garden with a pack of Marlboro Reds and waiting for people to come up to me and ask if they could borrow a cigarette. Which is the way that I connected with a number of my neighbors right away. I was at about a pack-a-month habit, smoking for about 3 months one summer, and I learned and connected with a lot of folks over smoking, which I have to say, smoking is terrible. Don't do it. It really is bad for you. But it was my desperate way of trying to connect with the folks that were coming by and waiting for the bus, and over time, a few months and a few years, those people became my teachers and my neighbors and my friends, and it began to shape me towards the life that I live now and help me understand what it means to be a neighbor, what it means to connect with people and see the dignity and the beauty and the love of diversity within a community. So you can imagine how difficult it is to be looking at the news right now, to see a community, a neighborhood that I know very well. The place where I lived in South Minneapolis was only about 3.5 blocks from where George Floyd was killed in 2019, and about 7 blocks from where Renee Good was shot and killed just about a week and a half ago. And I've been getting news about what's going on in Minneapolis still today, not only from the traditional sources, but also from very dear friends who are still in that community, our teachers and social workers and small business owners, many of whom have experienced firsthand the sort of disruption and violence that is taking place in that community and many other communities like that in America today. And so I've been sitting with that as I've been preparing this message, and I have to tell you that this message has just kind of been sitting kind of somewhere right here in between my heart and my stomach as I've been processing this passage and preparing this message, because I just feel so angry and so disappointed and so aware that part of the problem that we're seeing today in the world, particularly my friends and family in the United States, is the fact that we have been telling such a negative story about our world and about our neighbors and about the communities that we live in. And I have to say, I think that we as a church bear a lot of blame for this, because we haven't been able to transcend the story, to transform the story. We've allowed stories that begin with scarcity, that begin with fear, that begin with violence and suspicion. We've allowed those stories to hijack the stories that we tell about ourselves and our world, and we've failed to tell a better story. You see, I think that we as the people of God have got a duty, a responsibility to speak a better story into our world. A story that begins with peace, a story that begins with abundance, a story that begins with love and acceptance. You see, we all live within a series of stories. That's why we're in this series called Stories That Shape Us. We live within a personal story. The story of our own lives, where we were born, what we do, the stories of our families, our parents and grandparents, the lives that they live, where they came from, our children and grandchildren, where we would like them to go, and the kinds of lives that we would like to see them inherit. We live within a cultural story of a certain people, in a certain place, in a certain time, our countries, our national stories, our cultural identity. But we also live within a cosmic story and a religious story that helps shape and frame and organize our understanding of the big questions of life. Who am I? Who is God, and what is God like? What's the meaning of all of this? What is our purpose in this world? Why is the world such a messed up place, and what are we supposed to do about it? Stories really do shape us. They really do mold us. The stories that we live by, and the stories that we tell ourselves are able to transform us and shape our lives. We can stand up here, I can stand up here and tell you what to do. I can stand up here, we could stand up here, Rupert could stand up here and tell you what to believe. But I really don't think that sort of of speaking, that sort of instruction, has the ability to transform our lives and transform our world and our culture. So much as being able to tell a story, to tell a better story. Tell a better story about yourself. Tell a better story about your God and your Creator. Tell a better story about your community, about the world that we live in and the world that we could live in, the type of world that we would like to create for ourselves, for our neighbors, for our children. We can't experience the transformation until we change the story. I believe with all my heart that the Scripture as a whole speaks a much better and greater and more beautiful story over us individually and collectively. It's hard to summarize or sum up the whole of Scripture in a succinct way, but I will assure you, and I promise you this much, it's good news. Spoiler alert, it's good news. You should try reading it. The Scripture is amazing. It's beautiful. Read the Bible. Find yourself in it. It's good news. Because it tells us that the God of the universe is not against us, but for us. God is not angry or disinterested, but He loves us. And God is not far, but very close. It's good news. God is for you. Isn't that a good story? Isn't that a beautiful story? Isn't that the sort of story that you would like to find yourself trapped within and living out in your life? What kind of world will we create for ourselves and for our neighbors if we actually believed that? If we actually lived like that? We as a people of God have been given this amazing story. And it is our job to hold it, to steward it, to live according to it, and to tell that story to our own generation, our own people, in our own ways. The people of God have always had a good story to tell, a better story to tell than the world around them, the people around them, the other stories that are being told. I want to give just one example that is relevant to today's passage. This is a story that comes from a piece of Mesopotamian literature called the Enuma Elish. It's a story that goes something like this. Tiamat, the great mother god, gave birth to all the other gods in the world. Tiamat's son, Marduk, the god of sky and storm, rebelled against his mother, rose up against the creator god, goddess. Marduk, in single combat with Tiamat, slayed his own mother, ripping her in half, taking half of her, putting her up into the sky, creating what we call the sky, and the other half putting down into the earth, creating what we now call the earth and the land. Marduk seizes power over the other gods, who then begin to complain about all of the work involved in living in this earth, caring for this earth. So he comes up with a cunning idea. Out of the dirt, the mud, he fashions human beings. He animates them with the blood of a slain enemy, bringing to life human beings to serve the gods, to work their fields, to provide sacrifices for their food, to serve the gods however they see fit. And when the humans grow too numerous, they become a little bit too loud and a little bit too noisy for Marduk and his siblings. So they send a flood to wipe out most of the human beings on the earth. It's a kind of familiar story, even if you're not familiar with ancient Mesopotamian literature, which many of us are not. But scholars have rightfully pointed out a lot of similarities between the stories of the ancient Mesopotamians and the stories that we read about from the Hebrew people in the book of Genesis. And there's some interesting conversations about the similarities and conversations about source materials and things like that. But I think the thing that's really fascinating for me is not about the similarities, but the differences. The difference between a world where everything is born out of violence, everything is born out of chaos. Humans who were made to serve the gods, who were animated out of the blood of a rival god, created to serve a world where power is the only organizing principle and violence is endemic in all of it. When you think about it in that light, the Genesis story, the creation story that we receive from our Hebrew brothers and sisters tells a much better story, does it not? It's a much more beautiful story, a more hopeful story, a more life-giving, life-affirming story. Story about a world that was not born out of chaos or violence or conflict, but a perfect God at peace with himself, saying, you know what? This is so great. Let's create a world so that we can share it with other people. A God who looks over the world and says, it is good. It is good. And a God that was so delighted in what he created, he decided to create people within his own image. People like him, people that had consciousness, soul, creativity, authority, autonomy, and freedom. So he takes the dirt of the earth. But rather than animating them with blood through violence, he kneels down. He stoops over his creation and he breathes his own life into them. What a better story. What a more beautiful story. What a better way of locating yourself in the cosmic story of the world, of understanding your place within it, understanding that a God who you're not created to serve as a slave, but a God that you are invited to participate in relationship with. A God who loves you, who delights in you, and looks over you and says, "You're very good. You're very good." What does this version of the story tell us about ourselves? What does it tell us about the God whose image we were created in? What does it tell us about the world that perhaps we could create if we actually believed this, if we actually lived it out? What does it say about the neighbors that we interact with? The people who are different than us, who maybe we don't understand, who maybe speak a different language, eat different food. What does it say about their dignity? What does it say about their value? What does it say about their worth? What if we lived according to a story that didn't begin with suspicion or fear? That didn't begin with scarcity or violence, but began with abundance and love? I think the challenge of the Christian life, certainly the challenge of our present time in this day and age and everything that's swirling around us in our world, is to learn to live within that story. To learn to be shaped by it. To learn to be challenged by it. To allow it to correct our thinking. To allow it to transform us in the way that we act, the way that we live within the world. I think the beauty of the story of creation, the beauty of the passage today, this idea that we were created both out of dirt and divine breath, is it speaks so truly to the paradox of the human condition. We're all trapped somewhere in this continuum of thinking of ourselves like dirt, or thinking of other people like dirt, and treating people like dirt, or treating ourselves like dirt. But there's this whole other part that says, yes, but you're also divine. You also have the breath of God, the image of God, the love of God, the blessing of God upon you. We're all stuck in this story, this big paradox where we know deep down, each one of us has got maybe 80 years plus or minus, if we're lucky. We'll return to the earth, become worm food, if you want to put it in an artful way. We've just got a bit of time here on this earth. One of some 8 billion. Most of us live particularly ordinary lives, and we just get caught up in the regular, everyday shuffle of work and life and kids and struggling to try and make a little life for yourself. And we understand that we're fallible and we make mistakes, and sometimes we feel just a little bit like dirt. But we know there's this other part that animates us, that moves us, that drives us to create and to love. This part of us that we call the soul, or the imago Dei, or consciousness, that says there's something bigger, there's something better, there's something profoundly special and divine about me and about you and about our neighbors and our friends and even our enemies. Dirt and divine breath, all wrapped into one. We live within the struggle. We exist at different times along the continuum where we feel more like dirt or we feel a little bit more like divinity, but all of us are wrapped in this paradox, trying to live this out in our lives, trying to see it in our neighbors. And it's our job. It's our opportunity. I would even say it's our blessing to be called to be messengers, proclaiming a better story over ourselves, over our friends and our loved ones. You're not just dirt. You're not just dirt. There's a better story. How do we transform our thinking about ourselves? We start by telling a better story. As I said, I grew up in Urbandale, Iowa. I had an older brother, I still have an older brother, thankfully. Very clever, very bright. He always did well in school. His teachers praised him, and he was in a talented and gifted program back when that was a thing, when they took all the bright kids and pulled them out. And I, myself, I had a undiagnosed learning disability that challenged me in school. I never did very well in school. In fact, I had a second grade teacher who told me, because I couldn't get my maths problem solved in time, she told me I was lazy. And so the story began to be proclaimed over me, a story that I begin to believe about. I'm not very clever. I'm not very special. Later on, and when I got to university, my friends would tease me. They'd call me Urbandale because they just thought it was such a funny name. So there was a story that was proclaimed over me that I was slow. I was not very clever. I was not very smart. I was a nobody from nowhere. You don't change that story. You don't change the narrative by people coming in and telling you, oh, Andrew, it's okay, you're clever in your own way. You know, Urbandale sounds like a very interesting place. That all came. I mean, I'm okay. I'm better. But the way that we change the story, the way that we transform ourselves is not by just getting at little bits and pieces. You start by saying, you know what, you are a child of the living God, created in his image. He has a purpose for you. He has a place for you. He loves you. He delights over you. He sings over you like a parent sings over their children. God's crazy about you. Jesus looked at you and he said, you know what, that one, he's worth dying for. You transform the story. You live according to a deeper story, a better story. You tell a better story over yourself. Tell a better story over your community, over your family. Tell a better story over the world. We have people who come to this very room on a Thursday morning who are in crisis. They come looking for food. We've got lovely people here in this community that help care for them. We listen to them. We greet them at the door. We offer them a bit of food. And it's not just the material good that we're trying to offer them. We're trying to say something to them about their own value, about their own worth, about their own dignity when they come to us in great desperation. We have a better story to tell to them. We have a better story to tell ourselves. So it's appropriate today that we have a time of extended worship. So I'd like to invite Shirley and the band to come forward when they're ready here, because worship is such a profoundly impactful way that we sing and we live into the story about a God who loves us, a God who is great, a God who controls the story, and it reminds us of the story that we live into and live under in a way that maybe just somebody standing up in front of you and talking for 20 or 30 minutes cannot. So as the band is praying, I'd just like to invite you, let's all, can we just take a deep breath together and breathe in and breathe slowly. I think breath is such an amazing way to connect with God. As we remember that God breathed his own life into us, we can inhale and remember the divine breath that animates us. And after we inhale, we can breathe out any misinformation. We can breathe out the old stories that define us. The stories that we believe about ourselves, the stories that we believe about our community. And as we just take a moment here to breathe together, I just want to invite you to take a moment to inventory your own self, your own life. What stories are you living under that don't align with the story of God and the good news that he has to speak over you? What story are you living under where God is maybe an antagonist, or maybe God is distant, or maybe God is angry, rather than being the intimate God who stoops and kneels and breathes his own life into you, who desires a relationship with you, desires to know and be known by you? What story are you telling about your neighbor or your family member or your friend that maybe did something to you that you cannot forgive, or you're holding on to and you can't quite let go of? I'd like to invite you to tell a better story right now. And as Shirley and the band lead us in a time of worship, allow that story to penetrate, to be spoken over you, to begin to transform your life. Begin to believe it in a way that you can live it out in your family, in your community. We can begin to transform this world by telling a better story over it. Amen.